It's filled with food stocks and supplies, and I want you to blow it up. They won't like that, I'll tell you.
Welcome back, I'm Ryan from Bluewood Gaming, and today I'm giving my thoughts on Warhammer Vermintide 2. Now, this review is a week late because so many things changed in the 1.0 release update that I wanted to have another week to look at this game and all the things that changed in that 1.0 update. And in fact, with this review being a week late, I was able to see a lot of the other reviews and what they went over, and so I'm not going to be covering a lot of the same things that other reviews covered. In fact, I'm going to be taking this in a completely different direction. To give it short, Warhammer Vermintide 2, if you don't know, is essentially Left 4 Dead with high fantasy theme, being swords, sorcery, all that kind of stuff in the established Warhammer Fantasy universe. You don't have to know anything about Warhammer Fantasy to play this game. In fact, I have several friends who have never played a Warhammer game before, have never even heard of Warhammer before, and are doing just fine in this game, and can pretty much go over what the story is. Even though a bit of the backstory isn't given here because that's what the entirety of the first game is about, they can still kind of get what's going on in this game. So, pretty much to sum it all up, Warhammer Vermintide 2 is a great horde game with some rough edges, and those rough edges are what I'm going to be focusing on in this video, as I feel like not too many other reviewers adequately covered some of the bugs and some of the different things that you might run into that kind of mar this great game. But I'll give the final verdict right away. If you like horde games, buy this. These rough edges are not severe enough to really hinder your overall progress, except for a few things. I'll go over the big ones first, so that you guys can hear those right away. But if you don't hear pretty much anything in this, then it's not a big enough thing to really put you off from it. And I have already put nearly 50 hours into it in the pre-release beta and the full game, and this is definitely a fun time. Although I do recommend that you play with friends, as playing as a solo and just queuing with randoms isn't as much fun as playing with a group of people that you know. So let's start out with the biggest problem of all this game has, and that is balancing. And I'm not talking about balancing of enemies. Pretty much all the enemies are exactly how they should be, and I don't think that there's any glaring issues with the balancing of any of the enemies. It is with all of your pickable characters and the different weapons that they have. That is where all the troubles with balancing comes in. If you played the pre-order beta, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Back in the pre-order beta, Carillion was by far the most powerful character in the game. Like, she had the best ranged, even over Sienna, who's meant to be like an exclusively ranged character. She had better melee than all the other characters. She could survive longer than even the tanks. She was hands down the best character. And then the 1.0 patch came out, and they screwed her all up. Her melee is now below average. Her ranged is now average. She's not really the first pick for a ranged character anymore. Thankfully, that has gone to Sienna where it should be. But now now Carillion's range is a bit underpowered, and overall, I would say she's just a below average character now. Kruger, Kruber, he is a very good character early on, but then is a bit weak later through it, as he's really the second pick for everything. You don't really want to be the DPS guy with him because Barden does it better. You don't want to be the tank because Barden does it better. His ranged, he's like the third best ranged guy in the game because his ranged character class doesn't really help all that much. So Barden is, well, not Barden, but Kruber is completely underpowered. Barden is about where I would want every character to be, as two of his three character classes are good. The tank and the slayer are the power level that I want pretty much every character to be at. The Slayer is the DPS guy, by the way. That is the DPS version of Barden, and Barden happens to be the dwarf that you're seeing. Carillion's the elf. I didn't go over this. Sienna's the character that I'm playing, which is the witch. Kruber is the knight that you see up at the top of my left. And then the fourth character that isn't shown here is Saltspire, which I'll be talking about in just a minute. Continuing on, Sienna next. Sienna is very kind of underpowered in the beginning, but then gets to be one of the strongest characters in the game later on, particularly her Pyromancer class, which is what you see me playing. Her special ability is to throw out a homing fireball that can kill several enemies in one go. And the level 25 ability that she has allows her entire overcharge, which is the only thing keeping her staff from being just completely broken, the overcharge that you build up when you use it. With her level 25 ability, her homing fireball can completely dispel all of her overcharge. And so now, a bit later on than the gameplay that you're seeing here, where I'm only level 17, now I'm like level 27, and I can easily kill 50% plus of all the enemies that we run across. And in a particular mission, you're running across maybe 600 enemies, 600 enemies, and I can end up killing 300 plus of them, because I can just kill everybody. In fact, there's no real weakness that I have except against bosses. That is the only reason why I need other people, is bosses, or else I'd be able to completely just decimate everything. And so I think Sienna is a bit too powerful. And then finally, to finish off Saltspire, he is kind of a mixed bag. He's the character that I haven't seen the most of, which is weird because he's the average character. Like, I've seen more people play below average characters than I have the actual average. I think just overall, Saltspire is really just known for kill stealing and finishing off opponents that that I've seen other people like put a lot of time into. Like bosses, he will kill steal bosses all the time, and pretty much with two of his three classes, I've seen so many people misplay them that it's just kind of I wish that they would redo some of his abilities, or at least put more emphasis on them so that people would stop playing him so incorrectly. So now that we've got the biggest issue out of the way, the rest of these are pretty much all kind of nitpicks. Actually, wait, there is one other one that is big in its implication, but I haven't seen all that often. There is the occasional glitch where a weapon, when you try to upgrade it from a rare weapon to a exotic weapon, it will revert back to common, which I haven't gone over weapon rarity in the game, so I'll just do that now. When you play through, you get loot, and I'll talk about the loot system here in a minute because that's an issue that I have with the game. But there's 4 different classifications of loot. You have common, uncommon, rare, exotic, and then there's also a 5th one called veteran, but you have to play on the hardest difficulty to get veteran items. They are essentially the very high-end, late-game items that you only play or only use if you are extremely high level and you've been playing the game for a while, because they're kind of hard to get. So the 4th rarity is the exotic, and the 3rd rarity is rare. You can easily upgrade a rare item to an exotic. The problem is, some weapons, like I found this on 1 weapon, my friends had it on 3. Another friend of mine has had it on 1. So it is out there, but it's not common. But essentially what happens is you try to upgrade a rare weapon to an exotic, and it reverts back to a common. And this will keep happening on that same weapon. Like, you can go through the loop of upgrading it from common to uncommon to rare. Then try to upgrade it to exotic, and then it will revert back to a common. And you can keep going through that loop over and over and over again, and it just kind of sucks. So that is pretty big in its implication, but thankfully it doesn't happen all that often. So now let's get into the gear that I was talking about, and getting gear, because this is actually a bit of a problem that I see with the game. You don't get enough gear. For completing a mission, you get a loot box that can have 3 items in it, or it does have 3 items of varying rarities and types and whatnot. Then for leveling up, you get another loot box. Thankfully, though, even though there are loot boxes, you can't buy them with real money. You have to earn them through these 2 ways. There's no other way to get loot boxes. But each of these boxes only gets 3 items. And of that, essentially only one of them is going to be any good. Most of the time, none of them are going to be any good. And it takes about 30 minutes to finish a mission. And through the cost of upgrading items and just re-rolling stats and different things, it takes a lot of just junk items to scrap down to make your other items better. Other people will talk about the crafting system in more depth. I'm just barely glossing over it. But essentially, the rate at which you get items is 3, potentially 6, every 30 minutes. That is not quick enough. To upgrade an item from rare to exotic, it takes 50 scrap. From smelting down one weapon, you will get maybe 2, 3 scrap. Potentially up to 6, I believe. So you're not getting nearly enough. It's taking an hour, 2 hours to get enough scrap to upgrade a weapon. And potentially even longer to do everything else, like re-rolling stats and re-rolling weapon traits and all that. And so the rate at which you get these upgrade materials and re-rolling materials is far too slow. And in fact, I feel like they should add in a whole new system to allow you to get these items quicker, because the current rate is just much too slow. And now that I've gone through all the big things, I'll just go over some minor nitpicks that I've seen. Some of the jumping puzzles for getting grimoires and whatnot are a bit too tedious. Like, there's one spot I can think of in particular that has a good chance of killing you if you don't complete, like, this very specific jump. And that's a little annoying. It's not, like, terrible. It's just a minor annoyance. Then sometimes you'll get weapons that instead of having an actual weapon name, it'll be like bracket, placeholder, like long sword something something, then end bracket. Like, the name just got messed up when it was randomly generating the name. And so that's kind of funny. It's not any like big problem. It's just funny to see when it happens. Another one that's really funny when you come across it is just the sheer amount of spots in the game where you can see out of the map and out of bounds, because it's just so jarring when you see it. Like, pretty much every single mission has something like that, of which there's 13 missions in total. I can probably, like, find one on every single map where you can just see out of bounds, and it feels kind of lazy, but it's something that's just more humorous at this point. Then on top of that, of the 13 missions, there's several of them that I can think of that are just annoying to go through for some reason or another, and you'd think that that's a bigger thing, but quick play and random missions are a big part of this game, so you're going to be randomly selected which mission you play, and so you don't typically get the ones that you really dislike, but there's 2 missions that I can think of out of the 13 that I will just quit out of because I dislike so much. But those are usually because of the specific boss in them or something like that. But then again, I play Sienna and she has troubles against pretty much all the bosses. So that is pretty much everything that I can think of right off the top of my head. Of all of those, the balancing and the loot are the 2 biggest things that may put somebody off from playing this game, but I definitely think that this is an exceptionally good horde game, if not just an exceptionally good game altogether. Don't know if it's going to make games of the year or top games of the year, but we will have to see when that list comes around. So that is it for this. Remember, as always, I'm Ryan from Blue Gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next one.